The Caribbean forms one of the major 8 to 10 plates covering the Earth's surface, and its northern boundary is around here and comes north of these islands, and then it continues around into the Lesser Antilles. And the whole Caribbean here is moving towards the east with respect to North America. Now, I just outlined the major fault, but there's sort of like a subsidiary fault, which is this one, which is the one responsible for the earthquake. It's known as the Plantain Garden Fault in Jamaica, and over here it's known as the Enriquillo Fault. So compound is the Plantain Garden Enriquillo Fault. This type of fault is called a strike-slip fault. It's mainly vertical, and so if you're looking downwards on top of it, I hate to use my hands, but essentially it's moving like that. That's where I say this block is moving this way. Now, faults are usually locked by friction, but the plate keeps moving until we reach a level of stress where the friction on the fault can no longer hold it, and then it will slip very rapidly. And that's what happened in this case. This is exactly where the slip occurred on the earthquake. And probably there was something like 1.5 to 2 meters of slip. That's about 5 to 6 feet of slip. Several of my colleagues who are working in Haiti are using a GPS-based system to monitor this movement. The same kind of GPS signals as you use in your car, but much more sensitive. And they set those up a few years ago, and they realized that there's been quite an amount of movement recorded there. And what they did was and this is published in a paper in 2008, is that they calculated that since the last major earthquake in 1760, that the Earth, there'd been about 2 meters of motion there. So they were predicting that if there was slip, that would be the amount of motion, and that corresponds to they predicted a 7.2 earthquake. The only problem is that the science yet does not enable us to give us any idea when exactly that will occur. The likelihood of another earthquake in this area is very high. The plate is continuing to move. Places that have been affected in the past are Jamaica. There is another fault zone in northern Hispaniola that's very dangerous also. If I was a betting man, I'd probably say that might be the one that might be the next to go. The problem is now this section has slipped. This has changed the whole stress distribution in this region, and that we may expect some other earthquakes in the future. Let's hope they're small, but there could be some more. There's often a pattern where once the fault moves in one part, then other areas start to redistribute the stress, and it may cause further earthquakes. People have asked me a lot whether there's a risk of earthquakes in Cuba. There are on the southern coast here, because this is the major fault here. But the rest of Cuba really, and Havana, does not really present any kind of risk. And there's no risk here in Florida, because we're well away from the plate boundary. But people who have relatives in Hispaniola or Puerto Rico or Jamaica or any of the areas bounding the Caribbean and including Central America, earthquakes are a fact of life there, and so people should be prepared for them.